Hey everyone! I am so excited for tonight. You've had 2 lives in one day. It's been crazy, but this one is super special because I get to speak with Cari Samuelson. And for those of you who don't know, Cari lives in central Nebraska. She's a direct entry midwife student, and she's attending the National College of Midwifery and Apprenticing with the Home Birth Center midwives in Utah. So Cari is also a midwife assistant. She's a doula and a birth counselor, childbirth educator, and her mission is to work towards practicing midwifery, is to provide the best support, knowledge, and comfort to families all the way through their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum time. And it's one of her most adored experiences in their lives. So, along with an open heart and safe space for all individuals, she looks forward to talking with me today about midwifery and especially home birth in Nebraska. So if you're here, if you are ready to hear from Cari, I would love to know that you're here. So just wave hi. And I see Cari's on, so we'll go ahead and invite her. Add Cari. All right, so it's adding her. Hey, Mariah. All right.
Hi.
This is so fun. Is it working?
Yeah, I think so. If I wasn't sure if there would be an echo, I can put my headphones on if there is.
There's a little echo.
Okay, I'll go ahead and put my headphones on, so maybe that will help.
I think that's a lot better.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. All right.
Okay.
Great. Well, this is so fun. I'm really, really excited to get to talk to you. I did a little bit of an introduction, but I'd really like to hear from you, and I know we all would. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself and, yeah.
I am, like you said, I live in central Nebraska. I'm a mother to 3. I have kids from ages 6 to 18 months. I've kind of had a different array of birth experiences. My oldest I had in the hospital with a family doctor, and then my second I had in the hospital with a nurse midwife. And then my third baby I actually had unassisted at home because I could not find a midwife. So I've kind of been in a lot of the areas and experienced a lot that women and families are experiencing here in Nebraska. And yeah, I'm married to a husband. I'm married to a farmer. My husband is a farmer, and we just live out here in rural Nebraska. And I'm just very excited to hopefully be a part of this shift that I think many of us are wanting here. So,
Yeah, it's been really fun. We have been conversing quite a bit since, a shift is starting in the laws for Nebraska, and it's just been really cool to, converse with you and see this movement of women who really want birth choices and they want the freedom of that. So it's been really fun to get to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. So,
yeah.
So you are currently a student and a midwife student, right?
Yes.
What made you want to become a direct entry midwife?
It really led me there. I mean, I've always been interested, but I just always thought, oh, that's kind of a dream. I have little kids and I'm in Nebraska, right? Can't be a midwife here. But then when I was pregnant with my third baby and I knew that I was going to have her at home, and I joked with my husband. I said, if anyone tries to make me go to the hospital, I'm going to run out in the cornfield and birth this baby. Like, that's just where I was at. But I couldn't find I did want a midwife, and I searched, and I didn't have, I could not find the midwife I felt was right for me. And so that really got me thinking. And after I had my third baby, that's when I became a doula. And I loved my doula training, but I knew from that moment on, I came home from my doula training and I'm like, I have to know more. I have to keep going. And I bought midwifery textbooks, and without even realizing it was happening, it was just, I have to know more. I have to know all of this. And then it just really, I was just really driven because I know that there are other families out there like mine who want to have their baby at home, but they need support. And luckily, I had really great support. My husband was awesome. I had two of my close friends who were doulas who were amazing, and I'm very on the mindset I could start studying and things on my own. But a lot of people can't do that, and so that really also helped drive me to midwifery because I really want families to have options, and I feel really driven to support them in whatever capacity that they need.
Yeah, it's needed. And especially in central Nebraska, there's not a lot of options, period, for birth.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really, really neat. And, but before we go further, I know there's a lot of people on here who don't really know the difference between midwives. And, we're hearing a lot of things like licensed and unlicensed and all of these different words like direct entry
Mm-hmm.
midwife, certified nurse midwife. Like, what? Can you just narrow it down and explain it to us so we can all be on the same page? Like, is there an
Sure.
unlicensed midwife? What is that?
Sure. And that's something it took me a long time to navigate. As I was searching for a midwife, I knew the nurse midwife I had was in the hospital with my second, but I didn't really know the differences besides that. So it can get kind of confusing. So I think a lot of the times when people think of a midwife, they think of a nurse midwife. And that is someone who generally goes to nursing school and becomes an RN, and then they enter midwifery school. And when they graduate, they're a certified nurse midwife. In 48 states, nurse midwives can attend home births, but in Nebraska, they cannot, and Alabama. So that kind of makes us unique. Also, normally nurse midwives are governed by like the nursing board who governs the other nurses in the state. And a lot of times their training is a little bit more medical because they are a nurse first. Sometimes their training happens more in hospitals. It just kind of depends on the route they take. When we talk about a CPM, that is a certified professional midwife. And then we also talk about a DEM, a direct entry midwife. So when you enter as a direct entry midwife, you have a couple options. You can go to a school, or you can go what they call the PEP route. And basically, that's an apprenticeship that you do, but it comes with a very large packet of paper that I'm currently working on. And you have to have a certain amount of experience in all areas. You have to have a certain amount of even just observed births, which would be like a doula or a friend. And then you're an assistant, and you have to have a certain amount of births there, and then as a primary. And beyond that, there's an entire skills packet. You have to have mastered these skills and have experience. Some people do that along with school. That's kind of what I'm doing. I'm working through a schooling program and I'm doing the PEP route. That's what makes a direct entry midwife when you choose one of those routes. When you're done with that, depending on the training that you chose, in order to become a certified practicing midwife, if you've chosen the school route, you have to go to what they call a MEEC accredited school. And right now I don't remember what that stands for, but it's basically an organization that makes sure that the school is teaching what's up to standard.
Okay.
And or you can have gone the PEP route, and then you qualify to sit for what they call the NARM, which is the National Certifying Test. And that makes you certified if you pass, and you are then a CPM. So you're always still a DEM. You're always a direct entry midwife. Some direct entry midwives choose not to certify. That's kind of a personal choice if you want to certify or not. And then there are traditional midwives, and a lot of them have various ways of getting their training and education. A lot of them still are a DEM, or they still go through the apprenticeship route. It just looks a little different than the traditional school or PEP route. And there are states, some states require license and some don't. Where I apprentice in Utah, they have an optional license. So I have worked with DEMs, I have worked with CPMs, and some who are licensed and some who are not. So sometimes when we see this headline, unlicensed midwife, it gives us this feeling like, oh, they're not credible, they don't know what they're doing. But in midwifery, it's a little different. And there are lots of unlicensed midwives practicing across the United States. And there are lots of reasons one may choose to license or not license. And that doesn't always equal accountability or training or education.
That's a really good explanation. Thank you so much for that. I think we just need to muddle through all that confusion, and that way women can choose the route that's best for them. Because, like you said, it doesn't really make a difference on how qualified a midwife is. It's their own personal choice whether or not they want a license, and just knowing those options gives women a choice. So thank you for that. So currently, if a mom wanted to go about having a home birth in Nebraska right now, what would she have to do at this current moment? I have had this question a lot, like, oh, well, home birth is illegal in Nebraska. I hear it all the time, and so they just don't do it, which is fine, but let's maybe clarify, like, if that was something they wanted to do, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, and I get that question a lot. You're going to be a home birth midwife, but you're in Nebraska, that's illegal. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that it's not illegal. In our law, if you look up the statute, it actually said the only type of midwife it mentions is a nurse midwife. And it does say nurse midwives cannot attend home births, which, like I said earlier, is a little bit unique. There's only 2 states in the United States who have that. But then beyond that, any other type of midwife is just not mentioned. So it's not illegal, but it's hard to find a midwife. There aren't many here, and there aren't many who are willing to attend births because they are taking a risk. Because Nebraska, the birth culture here is a little bit vicious. And if you have to transfer, or if unfortunately a birth outcome isn't exactly perfect, then the midwife is subject to an investigation and charges. And so currently, if a mom wants a home birth in Nebraska, they have a couple options. They can try to find a midwife, but most midwives are kind of underground, and a lot of them don't advertise. So you have to know the right people and get the right name and get the right phone number. And we have a whole state, and we have a few. So a lot of times it involves a lot of travel, or the midwife misses the birth because they're 6 hours away, and or families choose what I chose was an unassisted birth. And a lot of people aren't quite clear on what that is, and that means that you birth without anyone who is trained in assistance. So, like, my husband caught my baby, and it always is very daunting to me when families have to make that choice. If it's not something that and some women and some families automatically choose that. And I believe that's totally up to them. Everyone can choose
the unassisted.
Yeah, they can choose where they birth, but it's always sad to me when it's like, well, that's my only option. And so right now, I mean, you can have a home birth in Nebraska and you can have a midwife, but you have to be able to find one. And it's hard, and it is a risk that the midwife is taking by attending. And so a lot of times there's a lot of understanding about not advertising it and not telling everyone. And I think that a lot of that needs to be changed.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. Well, speaking of changing things, is there is anyone working on the law as it stands right now? And do you have any updates about that?
I do. So, for a while, I have felt, and I actually have uh, someone I work with. She's also a student DEM. She's actually kind of my mentor. She's been in birth longer than I have, and she teaches me a lot. But we have talked about what are we going to do? How are we going to change this? But then we've gone to other states. We actually went to a meeting in Kansas with the Kansas Midwifery Alliance. And in Kansas, they're not regulated. Actually, they're a lot like Nebraska, where there's no regulation, there's no license available. And that's something I didn't say earlier when we're talking about licensing. In Nebraska, if there is a non-nurse midwife, they're automatically labeled unlicensed, but a lot of people don't realize no such license exists. So not only do some midwives not choose to get a license, some don't have access to one. And in Nebraska, we don't have access to one. In Kansas, it's similar, but their birth culture is a lot different, and the state isn't vicious towards midwives. And their home birth midwives can draw labs and send in a
Wow.
complete blood count, you know,
Huh.
and all of those things. So, but we went there to just make contacts and meet people and see how it is in other states. And they're kind of wondering, should we move towards seeing if we can get licensing? And so we've thought about that here in Nebraska, but then we also had the thought, it's not horrible here because it's not illegal. And being unregulated gives families a lot of autonomy over their birth and who is there and what that birth looks like and what that midwife can do for them. And so it's kind of a hard line to follow, but at the same time, we really want good working relationships with hospitals and with medical providers, because that's a big part of our training that I don't think a lot of people realize is because our philosophy is birth is not a medical event, right? So, but sometimes it does become that. And so a big part of our training is when to recognize that and when to know that we need the medical side. And so having a good standing relationship with them is really important. So that way, if anytime in a pregnancy, birth, or postpartum, it gets to a point where we need them, we know we can go ahead and transfer. And it's a good experience for the family, and everyone is respected and gets the best care that they can. So that's one reason we kind of want to make a shift in Nebraska. And I don't like to make it about midwives because really I genuinely feel it's about families and their choice. But also, so these midwives who are serving families don't have to worry about every birth, am I going to go to jail?
Yeah.
So I struggled with it for a while, but recently I have been in contact with a senator who he actually was kind of wanting to put something forth, but before we made contact. But we're trying to work towards birth choice in Nebraska. So not an automatic, okay, give us licenses, or give us a collaborative agreement with OBs who basically, want to make all these regulations. That's not the midwifery model of care. And he is very open to that. And I think that's amazing. We actually had a meeting just this morning, and he was very open. And he's actually a chiropractor. That's his profession. And so, he kind of, he can relate with midwives, how sometimes people think of a midwife and they're like, oh, they're not very trained, they're quacks, these things. And chiropractors get that sometimes too. So
They do.
yeah, that was nice. And he was just very open to listening to us and trying the avenues that we're interested in. And so I really feel like there is change coming. But what I encourage everyone to do is to come together. It would be nice if we could kind of all get in the same area, so we're all kind of working towards the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that goal is that families have a choice, not necessarily only these types of midwives, or these types of restrictions, but that the families have the right to choose where they birth and with whom. And I would love if people could get behind us and reach out to their local senators, because it's very early in the works and nothing is being presented but just ideas. And it would be nice to kind of start talking to all our representatives. So if the time comes and a bill is presented, we have other support and other public support and home birth advocates and other families who have gone through things similar to what I have, or like you said, wanted a home birth but was told it was illegal, so they just didn't even explore it. Or they were faced with the option of no midwife or hospital, and so they chose the hospital. So yeah, I think that it's going to be really good. And I think that I hope that everyone can agree that, well, not everyone supports home birth. And I totally understand that. And I know everyone, there's a different setting for everyone. But I hope that everyone can understand this isn't really just about home birth or just about midwives. It's just really about parents having autonomy to make choices for their families. And if your choice for your family is the hospital, that should be supportive. If your choice for your family is a birth center, that should be supported. Same with home and with midwives. So that's my
Yep.
hope, that we can kind of all come together and get on the same page with that, at least, even if we would choose something different or we think a different option is better for ourselves.
Yeah. That's so good. I know it's hard to kind of step past your own beliefs
It
and
is, yeah.
realize that, not every family is going to choose the same thing as you, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because that's what's best for their family. And I mean, with my first, it was a hospital birth turned C-section, and with my second, I knew that I didn't want to go into the hospital again. And a lot of people don't understand and will probably never understand my choice to have a home birth, but that's okay. Like, that was what was best for my family, and I would
Yes.
never tell anyone that what's best for them is a home birth. Like,
Yes,
that's
exactly.
their choice, and they need to have that autonomy to make that decision without judgment and
Yes.
without feeling pressure at all in any direction. So
Yes. And
yeah.
I really, that was a good learning experience as a doula, because I came to birth from just having an unassisted home birth. And I always tried to make sure that no matter what my clients chose, I supported it. They always had the information, and it was always in an informed consent. But if they went in there and they said, no, give me the epidural, I supported that, because I believe everyone has the choice for whatever those options are, even if it's something I wouldn't choose. So, and
Yeah.
I really hope we can get the same respect in all directions for all families.
Yes. Ah, I agree. Well, speaking of you being a doula, I would love to hear your favorite birth tip that you would give moms, because I know there's a lot of moms on this page and a lot of people who follow you, new mamas. What is your favorite tip or
Ah,
two?
I was gonna say, it's so hard to pick a favorite, but one of my favorite things to tell women is that no matter what their body does, no matter what path their birth takes, they are still amazing. And what we do, no matter what that looks like, is amazing. And there will always be a point you come to, no matter where you're at, in what setting, no matter if you choose an epidural or not, whatever your birth looks like, you'll probably always come to a point where you say you can't do it. But you can, and you will, and your baby will come. And I always try to just encourage moms that most of the time you get to that point, but you can do it because you're amazing.
Yeah. Yes, that is so true. And we're in such a culture of surrounded by fear of childbirth. So when we do
Yeah.
get to that point, it's like, nope, I'm done. Like, I really can't do it. I promise.
Yes.
And I just, yeah, I always say, like, you are doing it.
Yep,
Like you're
you're doing
currently
it
doing it
now.
right now. And
Yes.
yep, moms are so strong, way stronger than we give ourselves credit for.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so is there any last comments or thoughts on birth, on doula life, midwife life? How's your anything about your schooling? Just lay it on
Oh man, I could talk for hours. No. Uh,
us.
I just think since entering birth work, I have made so many amazing relationships with all sorts of people. And sometimes I feel like people look at me and say, oh, she had a home birth. She's going to be a home birth midwife. Um, there's only this one way of thinking. And it's really not. I believe that birth is such an important event. And I think sometimes our society diminishes that. Like, no matter what happens to you, it's okay because your baby's here. And that is very important. But I think it's important we realize how much birth affects us and affects our journey as parents and the rest of our lives. And so I think it's very important, no matter who we are, no matter our profession, our personal beliefs and choices, that we come together and support all of these things.
Yeah.
And I think it can make a big change. And I hope that I just always feel this big divide in the types of births, and especially since I've moved towards home birth. And I just have this hope that we can all come together and realize that it's not my choice, that's not the choice I would make, but go you, because that's
Yeah.
amazing for you,
Right.
type of thing. I have really loved my schooling, the National College of Midwifery. It's been really great. I have loved being in Utah. It's much
It's gorgeous.
it is beautiful there, and it's the culture is much different. Home birth and midwives are the norm, and they're very supportive and loved. And I hope going there and coming back, I can bring some of that back with me,
Yeah.
and just really get people to realize that instead of disagreeing and fighting with each other, we can get so much further if we're accepting and understanding and create a culture of support, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Because support's not only important for midwives to keep doing what they're doing, but it's important for parents. Like
Yeah.
parenting is hard in and of itself. So when we have a difficult birth experience, or we're not feeling supported in our decisions, that creates a divide, and it creates a lack of community, and all of that stuff matters when raising our children. So
Yes, very much.
it is very, very important. But I am so happy you got on with me tonight. I so appreciate it and love learning from you and fighting the fight with you. I'm excited for change because it needs to
Yes.
happen.
I think it's
Um,
a long time coming.
I agree. I agree. But if someone wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way to do that? Or if they have any more questions about what you do or how to help, yeah.
Yeah, they can go to my page. My birth services page is Sacred Sage Birth Services. They can also look me up on Facebook. I'm Cari Samuelson, and send me a direct message. And then I'm always willing to talk to people on the phone and things. So if they're interested in that, or FaceTime, or whatever it is, we can always
Okay.
set that up. Yeah, and I do want to say there's a lot of work to be done working with this senator and kind of trying to make this change. So anyone out there who is willing to be a part of that and give any kind of support and kind of do some of the legwork with us, because there's a lot of research going into it and finding statistics and all of that kind of stuff, would be very grateful for all of that kind of support too.
Yeah. Yes, that is so great. So if you guys, all of you watching, if you would share this on your page, because I know there's more women out there who would like to help and who maybe don't know exactly what's going on, but I think this really could help other women know their options. And yeah, we just really want to spread the awareness that um, home birth is legal and things are changing, and Women deserve more choices than they have right now. So
Yes,
thank you so much,
absolutely.
and I hope you have such a great night,
Yeah.
and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you so
All
much for
right.
having me.
You're welcome. Bye, Cari.
Bye.